Hi, welcome back to SU Student Loan Speaks. I am Destre Capers, the Director of Marketing and Outreach with South Carolina Student Loan, and I have Jonathan Rhodes with me, one of the outreach managers.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. So today we are going to hit some of our frequently asked questions.
Oh, here we go.
So if you don't know, the outreach team travels the state and we do paying for college presentations, FAFSA events, scholarship workshops, really just trying to meet the needs of South Carolina's communities on figuring out how do you navigate paying for college. And so we do a lot of outreach across the state. And if you're interested, you can visit our website and request for one of the outreach managers to come to your site for free to provide some assistance with your schools and your students and communities. But we get a lot of questions.
Yes.
And we love the questions. But some of them, we find that they are pretty frequently asked.
Yes.
And there's a lot of shifting and changing that's happening right now as well with the federal government. And so just some of the questions come from that. And then also just, it's been forever, as a parent would say, it's been forever since I've done it. This has all changed. When I did the FAFSA, it was paper.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the paper FAFSA. I don't think I did one on paper, but I remember it.
I remember because I did actually participate in the paper application of the FAFSA, yes.
And so, it's now had a simplification process, which worked out really well last year. And so sometimes we get questions about the FAFSA, and then sometimes we just get questions about paying for college in general. So Jonathan has graciously agreed to answer some of the questions that we get from parents and from students, because students are concerned about student loan debt as
Very
well,
much so.
and how they plan to pay for college and be successful once they graduate. And so we're going to tackle some of those questions today. And the first question I'm going to ask, I'm not going to ask it like a parent just yet, because I don't feel like a parent would know this terminology. So I'm going to first ask, what is cost of attendance?
Cost of attendance is basically everything in totality what you're actually going to pay to your bottom line. You're looking at cost of tuition, you're looking at your meal plan, you're looking at your housing, you could be looking at books and fees, technology fees, everything that you should be looking at down to the cent of what is going to cost you for that financial aid year to be able to attend college.
Key point, for the year.
Yes.
So each year there will be a cost of attendance, aka a bill that you would receive. It goes towards your bill that you would receive that you will need to pay attention to. So oddly enough, paying for college is not one of those things where you see your bottom line investment on the front end.
You don't.
It's year by year by year, by degree, by degree, by degree.
And the thing with that is, some parents understand that, a lot of students don't. They only look at things with probably in that little box there. So, and I always tell students, you're not going to be the same person as a freshman or you are as a senior.
Absolutely.
You're going to be more invested in what this looks like when you become a senior, because now you're going to start getting bills to your account, know exactly how much.
Name.
Yes. So I always tell parents, make sure you're looking at the bottom line, because again, we do a lot of orientations with colleges, and now is a time where a lot of families are getting those final balances and are like, I didn't understand, or didn't know this is what I had to be required to pay. And sometimes they just have to really make some decisions really quickly to be able to have their student, attend college in the fall.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that was a part of FAFSA simplification was there to be more transparency on the cost of attendance. So I believe it was 2025, all the financial aid offices across the country were given a deadline to provide cost of attendance for all of their programs. And so historically, you would have seen tuition and fees on the website, but now you actually are supposed to be able to see the full cost. So direct, which as Jonathan mentioned would be your tuition and your fees, and then your indirect would be your living expenses, your meal plans, which can essentially double what they see for their tuition.
And what I will always say, and when I talk to parents, I always say, first of all, ask the question, do you know how much it costs, to attend? Because of course we do the orientations, and parents sometimes don't know. They quote the cost of tuition, which is historically one of those things where people know the cost of tuition, but don't necessarily know those other fees.
Yeah.
So I try to tell early, especially when we're doing presentations in the fall, make sure you know what that cost looks like so you won't have any surprises, because again, parents really have to make some decisions of, when it comes to loans, because a lot of pocket balances could be, especially if you're coming out of state, attending a school that, because we know the cost goes up a little bit more, attending out of state, just some of those balances could be, increased for parents, and they really, really have to make some decisions about how my student going to, and it's hard to tell a student no when they've seen campus,
decision.
And it's really, really hard. So just want to kind of educate a lot of parents, even though they've been in college, just maybe it's been some time, but just knowing what that cost of attendance is very, very important to know that, because the rest of it is going to come as far as, what else you have to pay for college, but just understanding what that cost is.
Yeah,
very,
for sure.
very, very important.
And that's why I wanted to start with that question, because if you don't understand what you're going to have to pay or what's anticipated being paid, then it's hard to navigate your scholarship process. Like, how aggressive do I need to be with my scholarships? Making sure you complete your FAFSA on time and things like that, which I think kind of leads us into our next question, which is, what's the starting point for paying for college?
Starting point I always say is your FAFSA. And one myth that I get from parents, maybe I shouldn't complete it, I make too much money.
Right.
You never know what you're eligible for until you actually complete that FAFSA.
Yeah.
Okay? So I always say start there. No matter how much money you think you make and what you're eligible for, start with the FAFSA. That's going to give you a barometer of how much grants do I qualify for through the federal government. So that's something that you can always start with. Then you can kind of break it down to basically scholarships if I need to take out any student loans. But initially, starting with your FAFSA.
I 100% agree. And the FAFSA is a free application for federal student aid.
Yes, it is. I mean, you would think it would be that easy, but again, a lot of students are, and that's the thing what gets students excited when they hear the FAFSA in the fall, that they know they're getting started, but sometimes that's only just the first step.
It is the first step.
So they got to understand what the other steps are, but again, that's kind of getting them excited. But again, parents, please make sure that you understand what you're eligible for with those federal Pell Grants to know what the balances are.
Yeah. So I'm going to slide a question in there that wasn't given to me, because I've gotten this question before where parents are coming to presentations that we're having and they say, well, I have a student loan, or I took out a Pell Grant, or I utilized this. Is it going to affect my student?
It won't. Your financial aid situation doesn't have any effect on your student applying for federal student aid. So I always advise parents, because that's one hot topic, especially with student loans. Will it affect my student if they have to get that? It won't at all. Everyone has their separate financial aid account. Parents, you will have to help your student, complete their FAFSA, but it doesn't have any effect on what you have considered to your student. So. No correlation.
So what you used as a student, whether it was when you were 18 or whether it was when you were 35 getting your doctoral program, is completely separate from what your student is going to be eligible for as an 18-year-old going to a technical college or a four-year institution.
Agreed.
Okay, that's a
really good
point.
Question.
That's a good
really
point to clarify. Okay, so you kind of hit on this a little bit. So a lot of students, especially in South Carolina, they're like, "Oh, I'm ready to go to college and I want to go out of state. I want to go to," and they can name the school that they want to go to. So why should a student still consider it in-state school?
I will always say consider in-state school because of the cost. I would just put a number out there, something like a South Carolina college, average maybe about $35,000. It could be more, it could be less, but the average is about that. Out of state, you could be looking at around 50. So especially when you're looking at in-state scholarships, you have your Palmetto Fellows, your Life Scholarship, your Hope Scholarship, your lottery tuition assistance. If you are attending out of state, you don't qualify for any of those. So I always advise parents, don't let your student make an $80,000 decision without you having a little bit of input.
Yeah.
Because of course we love our kids, we want them to have the best college experience, but you definitely want to make sure that they know that they're leaving money on the table if they go out of state, and if not, that's another benefit for parents have to apply for maybe student loans down on the line to be able to cover some of those balances.
So I just want to correct one word. So they could still be eligible for in-state funding, they just couldn't take it out of state with them, right? So that's what we mean by leaving money on the table.
Correct.
So South Carolina, you do have to attend a South Carolina institution, and it can be a 2 or 4 year institution, and then you just have to maintain the criteria. But the moment that you cross that border, you're leaving that South Carolina money there. So if you do have an out-of-state school saying that they will match your South Carolina Palmetto Fellows or Life Scholarship, I would recommend, 1, getting it in writing.
Yes.
And then 2, making sure they're willing to match it all 4 years that you plan to be there. Because that's important. You're going to be there for a while, so you don't just want it your freshman year. And if you look at our scholarship podcast episode, you will hear us talk about the importance of looking for scholarships each academic year, because it can change from year to year.
And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, of maintaining those in-state scholarships. Most students lose that scholarship in their first year because most of the South Carolina State scholarships, the criteria to maintain it, you have to have 30 credit hours every single financial aid year, and also a 3.0. So most students, you kind of lose that either one of those, but it's very important to understand that you're taking a certain amount of credit hours every year and maintaining that 3.0 so you can maintain those state scholarships every single year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we do our paying for college presentation. We do it over 100 times a year, you guys. So we kind of know it front and backwards. And as you're standing at orientation, a parent may say, well, what's the best way to pay for college? Or what is what's the most common way that people pay for college? And we typically talk about 4. So can you kind of hit on those 4 ways really quickly?
The main 4 ways that you can actually pay for college is grants. And that's whether it's through money that's given to you. You don't necessarily have to pay those back, but it's through federal grants, through Pell Grant, things like that. Also state funded grants. You know, in South Carolina, we have the South Carolina Need-Based Grant and also the South Carolina Tuition Grants for independent colleges if you're looking to go there. Then we have scholarships. We can't talk enough about that. Scholarships is something that you can also apply for. Then you have work study. Work study is huge, and that's also dependent on you completing your FAFSA to know exactly what you're eligible for. And last but certainly not least, student loans. And that's the federal student loans through the sub and unsub. And you also have private loans. And that's something South Carolina student loan can actually help a lot of parents be able to cover some of those balances. So those are the main 4 ways that you can actually get started. But there are other ways, paying out of pocket for some balances that you may have depending on the family. But those are typically the top 4 ways that you can actually pay for college.
And again, you start that process with the FAFSA, and you want to complete that FAFSA as soon as possible.
Totally agree.
So some of the grants that are available out there have caps on the funding that's provided to the schools, and it's on a first come, first served basis. And so the sooner you kind of get in that line, once you meet that criteria, hopefully the school doesn't run out of funding before they get to your name. So the importance of completing that FAFSA when it opens up, and we're hoping that it opens in October this year. That's what we're hearing. You want to complete it as soon as possible. And we will do a whole nother podcast about the FAFSA so you can have some information about that. But those are the 4 ways to pay for college. And I think the important thing, as we talked about before, each year you could have a different balance that's due because you're looking from year to year to year. So one year your student may not qualify for grants, and the next year they may qualify for grants because someone's retired or disabled, or now they have an independent status because of X, Y, and Z. So don't count you yourself as the student or the parent out by not completing that FAFSA every single year.
That's a really good point. And also, a lot of students say, why am I have to take out my student loan amounts increase? Because as a freshman, you may be taking a 300 level class. But by junior, senior year, that class may go to a 500 level class. So that cost is actually going to go up. So when you're applying for, federal sub and unsub, it's only $5,500 as a freshman, but the cost goes up to $6,500 as your second year. In your third and fourth year, it goes up to $7,500. So look at those. Every number is not going to be the same from year to year. You're completely correct on that one.
Yeah. And so when we say sub and unsub,
oh yeah, that's a whole. Yeah.
We're talking lingo now.
Yeah.
So subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans is what's offered in the direct loan program with the federal government. And so can you explain the difference quickly?
Yes, they're pretty much intertwined because you have to get both together, okay? But one, which is the unsub, has interest that's carried along with that you will be responsible for once you've actually start getting those loans. Interest will start accruing on that once you've actually received that loan that you'll have to pay. The other one, subsidized, will be subsidized by the government. You don't have to worry about that. So it's just one has the interest, the other one doesn't. So you definitely want to make sure, again, once you've actually been in school, you start taking out these loans, it's going to become something that's going to be invested because now you're taking out student loans for yourself. So make sure you're going to studentaid.gov to know exactly what these balances are because it will give you what your lender is, how much you've actually borrowed for that year, so you can kind of keep track of that from year to year as well.
And keep in mind with the subsidized, they will pay for your interest while you're enrolled in school. But the moment that you exit school, and notice I said exit and not graduate because sometimes we leave school before we graduate,
correct,
that interest will start to accrue. So you can have a combination of the two, or you can have all of one or all of the other. It really just depends on your FAFSA for that year. And again, that FAFSA is really important because it can change from year to year what you're eligible for. All right, so any parting words for families as they are in the thick of it, as they say, of preparing their students to go off to college, they're attending orientations, they're buying the refrigerators and the pillows and and doing all of the fun stuff. Is there something other than the fun shopping stuff that you would like to leave our parents and students with?
Always, when I talk to parents, I always say, make sure you know what that cost is going to be. And I can, it may seem so mundane, but that's the main thing that I try to stress to parents because, again, I talk to parents all the time, and sometimes they don't understand what that cost is, especially when they're getting those balances. Understand when your student is committed to a college, what is that cost going to be? Because if not, then you really have to make them decisions around this time because now this is summertime. They're receiving final balances and they have to be paid before their student can actually be able to start classes. So parents, please make sure you're understanding what those amounts are that your students have to pay when attending, the college that they are committed to. So that would be my last words, please.
Awesome. And I'm just going to piggyback on what he said. I usually don't give my 2 cents here, but loop your students in as well. It's their educational journey. Give them some buy-in. Even if you're the type of family that can say, hey, if you can make the grades, we will pay for it. Your student still needs to be looped in on their financial aid process and the investment, because college is an investment for them in order for them to achieve their career goals. So with that is the end of our frequently asked questions podcast. I hope that you come back because I'm sure we're going to have another FAQ of maybe students and parents questions that we receive throughout the year. We appreciate your time and we'll see you in the next episode.